The apartment door slammed so hard the walls shuddered, echoing through the dim hallway. Oleg stood frozen, clutching an empty wallet, his fingers trembling with a mix of exhaustion and unease. In the living room, his younger brother Sashko, who has Down syndrome, sat sprawled on the couch, his face lit up with a grin so wide it could outshine the sun. "You're the best brother in the world," Sashko exclaimed, his voice bursting with joy, his eyes sparkling with something Oleg couldn't quite place, something secretive, almost knowing. Oleg's heart skipped a beat. What had happened last night? Why was Sashko saying this? And why did his words carry not just gratitude but a deeper weight, something that made Oleg's chest tighten with a creeping sense of dread? He couldn't tear his eyes away from his brother. At 22, Sashko had always been an open book, his emotions spilling out like water from a cracked glass. But now, there was a new glint in his eyes, a flicker of mystery that hadn't been there before. Oleg felt the ground shift beneath him. Last night's shocking act, the one he'd planned with such care, had changed everything. But how did Sashko know the truth? Did he suspect that the gift wasn't what it seemed? Oleg's mind raced back to the beginning, months of watching Sashko's joy fade, his endless questions about love that cut deeper than any knife. Sashko dreamed of a girlfriend, of romance straight out of the movies, but the world around him was cold, unforgiving. As the older brother, Oleg had vowed to find a way to fix it. And he thought he had. But now, staring at Sashko's radiant face, he wasn't sure if he'd gone too far, if he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Last night, Oleg had done something reckless, something that could either bring Sashko the happiness he craved or shatter the trust between them forever. He had hired Lena, a girl from a website, paid to play the role of the perfect girlfriend, for one evening. It was supposed to be simple, a cozy dinner, light conversation, a few hours of warmth to make Sashko feel loved. Oleg had planned every detail, from the pizza Sashko adored to the casual excuse that Lena was a friend from work. But why did Sashko now look like he held a secret? Oleg noticed his brother subtly slide his phone under a cushion when he entered the room. On the coffee table, a shiny hair tie gleamed under the lamplight, clearly not Sashko's. Had Lena left it behind? Or was it something else entirely? Doubts began to claw at Oleg's mind, but he couldn't bring himself to ask outright. Not yet. Sashko stood, still grinning, and shuffled to his room, humming a sappy tune from some rom-com he loved. Oleg stayed rooted in the hallway, the empty wallet heavy in his hand. His plan was supposed to be flawless, a one-night gift to lift his brother's spirits. But something had gone wrong. Had Lena told Sashko the truth? Or worse, had she done more than they'd agreed? Oleg felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his chest. He had to uncover what happened, but how could he probe his brother, who had suddenly turned so elusive? Sashko had always been a dreamer, his heart as big as the sky. At 22, he'd spend hours glued to romantic comedies, eyes wide as he imagined himself as the dashing hero sweeping a girl off her feet. But reality was a far cry from his fantasies. Down syndrome made him special, but to most people, it made him different, someone to smile at politely before looking away. "Why don't I have a girlfriend, Oleg?" he'd ask, his voice soft but heavy with longing, and those words struck Oleg like a hammer to the chest. He watched his brother's vibrant spirit dim, his infectious laugh grow quieter. Sashko would sit in the park for hours, watching couples stroll hand in hand, his eyes tracing their steps with a mix of awe and ache. He never complained, but his silence spoke volumes. At 28, Oleg felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He was the older brother, the protector, the one who was supposed to make everything right. But how? Sashko's friends were kind but kept him at arm's length, never inviting him to hang out or join their plans. Girls Oleg tried to introduce him to either dodged meetings or treated Sashko like a child, their pity thinly veiled. Sashko wasn't naive, he sensed their insincerity, and each rejection chipped away at his confidence. "Why am I not like everyone else?" he'd ask, and Oleg's heart would twist, unable to find the right words. Oleg threw himself into filling the void. He took Sashko to movies, splurged on new sneakers, spun silly stories to make him laugh. But it was like pouring water into a sieve, nothing stuck. Sashko didn't want distractions, he wanted connection, to be seen, to be loved. Oleg felt guilt gnawing at him, a constant reminder of his failure. He was the older brother, but he couldn't reshape a world that turned its back on Sashko. Every time Sashko's eyes dulled with disappointment, Oleg's resolve hardened. He had to do something, anything, to bring back his brother's spark. He tried everything he could think of, organizing outings to amusement parks, signing Sashko up for an art class, introducing him to new people. But each attempt ended the same way. Sashko would come home quieter, his shoulders slumped. "They don't want to be real friends," he'd say, and those words sliced through Oleg deeper than any blade. The world was unrelenting. People offered Sashko smiles but never their time. Oleg saw the pain it caused, the way it eroded his brother's belief in himself. Sashko wasn't naive, he felt every slight, every false kindness. Oleg's anger grew, at the world, at himself, at the injustice of it all. He was supposed to be Sashko's hero, but his efforts were crumbling like sandcastles against the tide. One evening, as Sashko slept, Oleg sat in the dark, his brother's words echoing in his mind. He couldn't stand watching Sashko's dreams fade any longer. But what could he do? The world wasn't going to change, and Oleg wasn't a miracle worker. Then, in a moment of desperation, an idea sparked, wild, risky, borderline insane. Scrolling through a website offering services, Oleg paused. What if Sashko could feel loved, even just for one night? The thought was reckless, but it took root. He imagined Sashko's face lighting up, his heart swelling with the kind of joy he saw in those movie heroes. Oleg knew it was a gamble, but he couldn't shake the image of his brother smiling again. He pushed aside the doubts, the fear that Sashko might find out, that it could backfire. He had to try. But now, after last night, Oleg wasn't sure if his plan had worked or if he'd opened a Pandora's box. Sashko's secretive grin, the hair tie, the hidden phone, it all pointed to something Oleg hadn't anticipated. What had happened? And why did he feel like he was losing control? That sleepless night, Oleg contacted Lena, a girl from the website. He poured out Sashko's story, his dreams, his loneliness, his uniqueness. "He needs to believe he's special," Oleg pleaded, his voice thick with urgency. Lena listened patiently, her tone calm and professional. She promised to be gentle, to make the evening feel natural, a simple dinner, some light conversation, enough warmth to make Sashko feel valued. Oleg exhaled, a wave of relief washing over him. This could be the answer, the chance to give Sashko what he'd been yearning for. He pictured his brother's eyes brightening, his laugh filling the room as someone finally saw him for who he was. Oleg planned the evening with precision. He ordered Sashko's favorite pepperoni pizza, set the table with care, and told Sashko a friend from work was coming over to keep things casual. When Lena arrived, her smile was warm, disarming, and Sashko's face lit up like a Christmas tree. Oleg slipped out, giving them space, but anxiety churned in his gut. What if Sashko sensed it was staged? What if Lena overstepped? When he returned hours later, Sashko was beaming, and Lena thanked him quietly before leaving. Everything seemed perfect. Oleg had done it, he'd given his brother a night to remember. But the next morning, Sashko was different. He glowed with a joy Oleg hadn't seen in months, but he avoided eye contact, his answers vague. "How was the evening?" Oleg asked, trying to sound casual. Sashko giggled, a blush creeping up his cheeks. "Awesome," was all he said before darting to his room. Oleg's eyes caught small details, Sashko's sneakers tossed carelessly by the door, as if he'd been in a rush. On the dresser, a shiny hair tie gleamed, followed later by a glittering hairpin, both unmistakably feminine. Had Lena left them? But why so many? Oleg's unease grew when he saw Sashko hide his phone as he entered the room. Sashko, who usually shared every detail of his day, was holding back. This wasn't like him. Oleg called Lena, hoping for clarity. Her voice was cool, detached. Everything went as planned. He's happy, isn't he? She said, but her tone felt off, too rehearsed. Oleg's doubts deepened. Lena was supposed to be a hired actress, her role clear-cut. But what if she'd crossed a line? Or worse, what if Sashko had figured out the truth? The thought sent a chill down Oleg's spine. His plan was meant to be a controlled gesture, a brief illusion of love. But Sashko's behavior, the secretive smiles, the hidden phone, suggested something far more complicated. Oleg couldn't let it go. He tried probing Sashko gently over dinner. What was the girl like? He asked, keeping his tone light. Sashko's face lit up, his cheeks flushing as he mumbled, "She's cool." But when Oleg pressed for details, Sashko squirmed, quickly changing the subject to his favorite movie. Oleg's suspicion grew. He called Lena again, but her responses were curt, almost dismissive. "Everything's fine, don't worry," she said, but the words felt hollow. Oleg started watching Sashko more closely, noticing how his brother had become cautious. Sashko locked his bedroom door, spoke in hushed tones on the phone, and flinched whenever Oleg got too close to his screen. One evening, Oleg overheard a whisper from Sashko's room, "I won't tell Oleg, I promise." The words hit like a punch. What was Sashko hiding? And who was he talking to? Unable to stand the uncertainty, Oleg waited until Sashko was in the shower and grabbed his phone. With a racing heart, he cracked the password and opened the messages. There they were, dozens of texts from Lena. "You're so sweet, Sashko, write me again." Oleg's breath caught. These weren't the words of a professional fulfilling a job. They were warm, personal, almost tender. The realization hit him like a freight train. Lena wasn't just acting. Something real was happening. Oleg's anxiety spiked. Sashko's secrecy was escalating, locked doors, hidden phones, evasive answers. Oleg overheard another whispered call, "I won't tell Oleg, don't worry." Betrayal? Or was Sashko caught in something dangerous? He replayed Lena's messages in his mind, warm, intimate, far beyond what he'd paid for. What if she was manipulating Sashko? Or worse, what if Sashko had fallen for her, oblivious to the arrangement? Oleg's stomach churned. He called Lena again, his voice sharp with urgency. "Everything's fine, Oleg." "You wanted him happy, right?" she replied, but her cool tone only fueled his suspicions. She was hiding something. Oleg's mind raced back to that evening, Lena's easy smile, Sashko's laughter, the way they seemed so comfortable. But what had happened after he left? Why was Sashko so different now? The plan was supposed to be a one-off, a controlled moment of joy. But the hair tie, the hairpin, the secretive calls, it all pointed to a truth Oleg hadn't prepared for. Desperate for answers, Oleg arranged to meet Lena face-to-face. At a quiet cafe, she sat across from him, her expression calm but guarded. When he pressed her, she sighed, her defenses softening. "I didn't plan this, but Sashko, he's genuine. I want to see him again, no payment." Oleg froze, his mind reeling. Lena wasn't acting. She truly felt something for Sashko. The revelation was both a relief and a shock. His plan had worked, but it had spiraled into something he couldn't control. Back home, Oleg watched Sashko closely. His brother was radiant, humming love songs, but still guarded with his phone. Oleg realized Sashko wasn't just happy, he might be in love. But did he know Lena's role had started as a paid performance? And was Lena truly ready for a relationship with someone like Sashko? Oleg's anxiety began to fade, replaced by a quiet determination. He had to guide this forward, but not as a protector shielding Sashko from the world. He had to trust his brother's heart. Oleg was done feeling powerless. He met Lena again, this time with clear intent. "Why are you texting Sashko? What do you want from him?" he asked, studying her face. Lena met his gaze steadily. "He's special. I don't know where this will lead, but I want to try." Her sincerity was undeniable, and Oleg felt a surge of pride for Sashko. His brother had touched her not with money but with his open, unguarded soul. At home, Oleg saw Sashko in a new light. He wasn't a fragile soul to be sheltered but a man capable of love, deserving of a chance. Oleg arranged a real date for Sashko and Lena, no payments, no pretense. He bought movie tickets, reserved a table at a cozy cafe, and sat Sashko down. "Lena likes you. Be yourself," he said, his voice steady. Sashko's eyes lit up, his grin wide and unguarded, and Oleg knew he was no longer holding his brother back. He was setting him free. At the cafe, Oleg watched from a distance as Sashko held Lena's hand, his laughter ringing out as he shared stories. Lena listened, her smile genuine, her eyes warm. Sashko wasn't the guy with Down syndrome, he was simply himself, and that was enough. Oleg's heart swelled. His risky, reckless act had given Sashko more than a fleeting moment of joy, it had opened a door to something real. Later, Sashko threw his arms around Oleg, hugging him so tightly it stole his breath. "You're the best brother in the world," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, his eyes shining with tears of happiness. Oleg smiled, a lump in his throat. Those words weren't just thanks for one night. They were a testament to the life Oleg had helped Sashko reclaim. He hadn't taken revenge on people but on the world's cruelty, proving Sashko was worthy of love, of connection, of a place in the world. The world could be harsh, but Oleg had shown there was room for miracles. And that was his greatest triumph. Oleg stood in the hallway, watching Sashko hum as he got ready for another day, another chance to live fully. The doubts, the fears, the guilt, they were gone, replaced by a quiet certainty. He had taken a gamble, one that could have broken them both, but instead, it had built something stronger. Sashko's laughter filled the apartment, a sound Oleg hadn't heard in too long, and it was a reminder that love, in all its messy, unpredictable forms, could change everything. Oleg had given his brother more than a night, he'd given him a future. And as Sashko turned, flashing that same radiant grin, Oleg knew he'd do it all again in a heartbeat.